Shalom and welcome once again to Lucayan Natsarim Fellowship. I'm your host, Gabriel. To my left is Aknadab, and out of the shot of the camera is Akyosa here to join us today for part two of our introduction to the prophets, consistency and contemporary relevance of our introduction to the prophets, starting with continuing on from part one, pardon me, where we started with who the prophets are. Okay, excuse me, what a prophet is. So the definition of a prophet. Last time we established how Yah communicates with his prophets. He communicates them in two ways, through and dreams and visions. We also determined that a prophet, even though a prophet may relay a prophecy that comes to pass, there are prerequisites that come along with that, which are
there always has to be a witness.
There always has to be a witness. Well,
Has to be proven.
okay, but how do we vet a prophecy that has come to pass?
Oh, it must come from, if the prophet says it's not, the prophet says it's come from an Elohim other than Yahweh.
Okay. If the prophecies come from an Elohim other than Yah, if the prophet tells us a prophecy, and even if it comes to pass, if it is in the purpose towards leading us away from the worship of, or the esteem of Yahweh, Eloheku, it is an apostasy, a false prophet. Yeah. Not that the prophecy that they said was false, but that their intentions are false. They themselves are false. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
For we also determined that Yah can use any vessel, yeah, through which to relay prophecy or a message or a word. Okay? So, and that's proven in many different cases in scripture. You can look at, the witch of Endor, who gave a prophecy to Shaul that was, she did divination, yeah, and careful scrutiny of the words reveals that it was simply perceived to be Shemuel that was risen to Shaul, and he was reiterating something that he had already told Shaul before. So the prophecy was sound, but she made him believe that it was under her own power or the power of familiar spirits. Right? So, today, and in another instance, where Yah uses the donkey to speak to Baalim and to scold him on the way towards Balak when he was going to curse Israel, or at least see to what this cursing of Israel was going to be. Yeah. So Yah doesn't really care what the conduit is. The message has to be consistent. You also notice that the message has to be. You also reveal that the message had to be consistent, and that the prophets were in line with what they were saying. Okay. We can get too much into that. Now, today, we're going to see if we can get into that once we get through who the prophets are. Who are the Nevi'im? How did they get this designation? And which of the writings of the scriptures are designated under the Nevi'im, or the prophets? Just as we have a designation for the Torah, which is the first 5 books, we have a designation for the Keftarim, or the writings, which Dibri Yamim and Tehillah. Was that?
Oh, them using the wise men of the wisdom books.
Yes. Also would be testaments of the patriarchs would be in there as well, because they're the writings. With Hadash, you also have the Nevi'im, and it makes up the Tanakh, T N K. Torah, Nevi'im, Keftarim, the law, the prophets, and the writings. Okay? So you can write that down if you need to. Or
an easier way
reverse
to understand it would be the law, the histories and the tellings and commentaries.
Okay. All right. Now, let's get started, shall we? So, first things first, most of you have, even if you don't have this version of the scriptures, which is the Institute for Scriptural Research, we also are using the Et Sefer from the Pigeon Publishing Group. And we also have the Hallelujah scriptures over there for reference. All of these are restored name text, which indicate that the name of Yahweh, Yod-He Vav-He, is being used and not the name of L-O-R-D or G-O-D. Okay? So, but we would encourage you to get these scriptures if you can't find them. We can put a link in our description that can lead you to a source for these. Okay? Yes. So you'll find in your scriptures, even if you have the King James Version, though, you can follow along. Most of the scriptures, most of the quote-unquote holy books are, regardless of publisher, are set up in much the same way. If you go to the forward, right after the forward, right before the forward, actually, should be, you'll notice they'll have an index. And then this one, it has a handy-dandy designation, a category. Nebaim, the prophets. Okay? We have here 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, I think 23 books, 24 books. Now that's in the canonized version of the scriptures. In the, well, that's it for doesn't have them either. In the Ethiopian Orthodox canonization, which is the oldest one we have known to man, aside from the Syriac codex, Syrian codex. These have several other books involved, much what we would call today in the Christian dispensation or the Eurocentric dispensational mindset as apocryphatic or pseudo-apocryphatic, okay? Or some people call them the lost texts of the Bible or the hidden texts of the Bible. They're not so much lost as they are omitted. Many of them include Ezra's, Baruch, Sefer Yasher. Yasher is not an individual, even though it could be an individual's name. It simply means the book of the upright. So the book of Jasher, Yobel or Jubilees, several of them are referred to or endorsed by the canonized scripture, the 66 books. Let's not even get into why they canonized 66 books. But the 66 books of the Bible, they are many of them are endorsed. Some of them are even plagiarized as First Yehuda or Jude, simply cut copies and pastes an excerpt from Hanok, Sefer Hanok, or the Book of Enoch. First Book of Enoch, not second or third, or I don't know. I think they came up with more sequels to that than they did the Halloween series. But I digress. Yeah. So we have, let's count them together, right? We begin at Yehoshua or Joshua, and we go to Shophatim, Judges. Then it's Shemuel Aleph or 1 Samuel, Shemuel Bet or 2 Samuel, Melachim Aleph or 1 Kings, Melachim Bet, 2 Kings, Yeshayahu, Isaiah, Yirmiyahu, Jeremiah, Yehezkel, Ezekiel, Daniel, Hosea, Hosea, Yoah or Joel, Joel, Amos, Amos, Obadiah, Obadiah, I apologize for that sudden and abrupt exit. I got heard a sound out there, and I got a little worried that maybe one of my dear old dogs might have been in a form of distress. She's not feeling very well right now, so I hope that you can apologize. I hope that I can apologize and you can forgive me, and we can move on and not lose the momentum that we just started up. I think we stopped at we stopped at Yonah. Yes? How appropriate that we would get interrupted at the most reluctant of the prophets. Yonah or Jonah, Micah or Micah, Nahum or Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah or Zephaniah, Haggai, oh, bro, that's the name, Zechariah or Zechariah, and Malachi or Malachi. Okay? All in all, Twenty-two. 22 listed. 22 listed in the canonized text, or the Catholic canonized text, the universally canonized text. Now, we got to look and see if we can find any versions of any other prophets. So 22 that are listed that have their own distinct writings, 21 that have their own distinct writings listed under their names with their endorsement. That doesn't count. Well, can't say 22 either because First and Second Kings also. So we're looking at 19, 18 or 19, 19 I think. No, 18. 18 prophets because Shemuel has 2. Okay? So we have 18 prophets that are listed with their writings. Do we have other prophets? Well, according to the designation and the definition that we defined last time in part 1, there must be other prophets and prophetesses out there. Yes? Miriam, we know, Moshe's sister, was a prophetess. Yes? Do we have an instance of any other prophetesses in Scripture?
Oh, the judge Deborah.
Deborah. Yes. She's another prophetess. Okay. So let's see if we can find some other prophets. We have here a list of different books of the scriptures, the so-called apocryphatic scriptures. One we have is Esdras. We have Baruch. Yes. I think we have Sirach. So those are 3 more that we know of. And we also have Tobit, but Tobit is in the Brit Hadash. But we can consider him to be a prophet of sorts, I believe, according to the content of his writings. That's what we have. So we have 3 more to make up for, I guess, the 3 spaces we lost. Yeah. So from 18, 3 more brings us up to 21. 1, 2, and 3. Right there. And if anyone's looking for a reference to any of those books, you can go to, we'll also put this in the description, you can go to sacredtext.com, and that'll give you a good resource for finding a lot of these texts that have been, omitted or repressed and obscured, and today considered esoteric. Esoteric meaning nothing but hidden. So today, now that we've identified the names of a lot of these prophets, let's go back. So we're right back at the table of contents of your index. We've got 18 prophets back up to 21 with the addition of the ones from the Apocrypha. All contemporary of one another, one leading into the other, representing different eras and different epochs in the tale of redemption. All prophets, speaking of one particular prophecy, which is in the first book of the first page of the book. Well, actually, it would be in the second or third. But here, we're in chapter 3, where Elohim makes a prophecy, and he places it over the Nachash first, the serpent first, where he says, because you have done this, you are cursed more than all livestock, more than every beast of the field. On your belly you are to go and eat dust the days of the life, all the days of your life. And here it is. And I put enmity between you and the woman, between your seed and her seed. He shall crush your head, and you shall crush his heel. On surface level of the Pashat, it's just man steps on the head of serpents. Yes, we walk where we walk upon or tread upon where they crawl. So naturally, we crawl where you go, and someone treads where you crawl. There's going to come a time where their heel will smite your head. That's a practical application if it's a practical look at it. But when you look at the Remez, the deeper understanding, and the Sod, the mystery of it, the deeper understanding is that Yah has proclaimed that in this same announcement here, he's proclaimed the entire plan of restoration and redemption from all mankind, and for the world and for Israel, the seed of this woman. The sword of that Remez is Yahushua himself, how he embodied every zibak, every offering, every sacrifice. That's what most people would understand it to be a sacrifice. It's not a sacrifice. He was the ultimate offering because he was the offering that the Creator offered to mankind on our behalf. Through Israel. It's important that we put that caveat up there. Every prophet that comes after this is going to fulfill some version of this. They're all feathers in the wings, if that makes sense. Leaves in the tree. Each one occupying its own space and time, requiring its own nutrition, requiring its own sustenance, and in time fades and falls. But the benefit it provides to the tree while it's there remains so and is remembered. It's not unlike its fellows. A healthy tree produces leaves that are almost identical.
And it said that no Navi says anything other than what another one said.
Okay. Not one Nevi'im says anything other than what another has said. Let's find a scriptural reference for that while you're here with us. And while we're looking for a scriptural reference for that, what I'm going to do is find an anecdotal example. What I just said. Just, you mind checking with that for me, bro? I'm making a quick one of it. Check. Make sure they're not getting stupid. Did you close the gate behind you when you left?
It was closed, yeah, but Davide went.
Did Davide lock that gate behind him when he went out there? If you wouldn't mind checking for me, Aki, I would truly appreciate it.
Some dog.
I appreciate that, Aki. appreciate that. Thank you. Okay. Yes. So, do you find any scriptural reference for the consistency of the prophets to prove or to establish the length that one cannot say anything different than the other? Okay. In the meantime, I'm going to show give an anecdotal example of exactly what I was talking about. While Akiyosha looks that up, and I'm confident he's going to find it. Just give him some time. All right. So the ones that we're going to look at are 2nd Shemuel or Shemuel Bet, chapter 7, 1 through 17. I'll read that, and then we'll see the aligning prophecy elsewhere. Yeah, we'll see the anecdotal prophecy, anecdotal alignment elsewhere. And it came to be when the sovereign was dwelling in his house, and Yahweh had given him rest from his enemies all around. This is Shaul. The sovereign said to Nathan the prophet, "Now see, I am dwelling in a house of cedar, but the ark of Elohim dwells within curtains." Pardon me, this is David. And Nathan said to the sovereign, "Go do all that is in your heart, for Yahweh is with you." And it came to be that night that the word of Yahweh came to Nathan, saying, "Go and say to my servant David, thus said Yahweh, would you build a house for me to dwell in? For I have not dwelt in a house since the time I brought the children out of Israel up from Mitzrayim, even to this day, but have moved about in a tent and a dwelling place. Wherever I have walked with all the children of Israel, have I ever spoken a word to anyone from the tribes of Israel, whom I commanded to shepherd my people Israel, saying, why have you not built me a house of cedar? And now say to my servant David, thus said Yahweh of hosts, I took you from the pasture, from following the flock to be ruler over my people, over Israel. And I have been with you wherever you've gone. And I cut off all your enemies from before you, and I made you a great name, like the name of the great ones who are on the earth. And I shall appoint a place for my people Israel, and shall plant them, and they shall dwell in a place of their own, and shall no longer be afraid. Neither shall the children of the wickedness oppress them again as at the first. Even from the day I commanded rulers over my people Israel, and have caused you to rest from all your enemies, and Yahweh has declared to you that he would make you a house. When your days are filled and you rest with your fathers, I shall raise up your seed after you, who comes from your inward parts, and shall establish his reign. He does build a house for my name, and I shall establish the throne of his reign forever. I am to be his father. He is my son. And if he does perversely, I shall reprove him with the rod of man and with the blows of the sons of man. But my loving commitment does not turn aside from him, as I turned it aside from Shaul when I removed him from before you. And your house and your reign are to be steadfast forever before you. Your throne is established forever. According to all these words, and according to all this vision, so Nathan spoke to David. Okay, how was this translated to David? How did David get this message? Anybody? Do we know? How did David get the message? How did David get this message?
That was
The last verse of what I just read. The last verse of what I just read. Second Samuel. The last verse. According to all these words, according to all this vision, so Nathan spoke to David. No, so Nathan spoke to David. How did David get this message?
From
Nathan. How did Nathan get the message?
yeah.
How did Nathan get the message? According to all these words and according to all this vision, so Nathan spoke to David. How did David get the message? Nathan gave it to him. How did Nathan get it? Through a vision. Who gave Nathan the vision? What does that make Nathan? 22. There are many prophets. If we go around counting prophets, we can be counting all day, right? Does this line up in any way with the first prophecy that I said is the root of all prophecy? How so?
Well, it reflects or points to the Messiah and the coming Redeemer, the promised Redeemer.
The promised Redeemer, the Moshiach. Where did you see the first allusion to that? Verse 12, yeah? Where it says, when your days are filled and you rest with your fathers, I shall raise up your seed after you, who comes from your inward parts and shall establish his reign. Now, there's a peshat to that, right? Just like there was the peshat here, where in Bereshit or Genesis chapter 3, where it says, I put enmity between your seed and his seed, and he shall bruise your head and you shall bruise his heel. And it's natural that a man treads upon a serpent. Yes? Right here, it's natural that a king's offspring should rule after him, is it not?
Yeah.
Why are they saying this in this particular way? Is this something special or particular or exclusive to Israel that a king's son should rule after him?
No, it's universal.
It's universal. So what is it? What is he saying? He's speaking of, is it something strange to consider that a man should tread upon a serpent's head? Is there somewhere in the world where that does not occur? Where you step on the serpent. These are pretty practical and anecdotal examples. Yeah, they're easy to understand. Yeah. So what is special about them? Why is it alluding to? How can we know that it's alluding to something greater?
When it speaks about the reign lasting forever.
Well, when it speaks about not just that in the initial part of it, when it first discusses it, because until then it's talking about Israel. It's reiterating what was already established in the Torah.
Yeah.
The Torah itself is a prophecy, but it's a contract more than it is a prophecy. Yeah. What it's doing is reiterating the contract of the Torah initially through Israel. See how it speaks of Israel. I shall appoint a place for my people Israel and shall plant them. That's telling that's the blessing of the Torah. You've been obedient. Now comes this part of the blessing. Yeah. This is another part of appointment. Our six actually points of the progression of deliverance are thus deliverance, obedience, deliverance, revelation, appointment,
and then
the promise and the fulfillment of the promise. Right now, they've been delivered because of obedience. Yeah. And they've been now, Yah has revealed himself. He's appointed David again now to build him a sanctuary. Yeah. And now he's giving them a promise. It's reiterating a promise that was already iterated initially to Israel, to all of Israel. But these promises get broader in their scope, but also more acute in where they're being delivered, if that makes any sense. It's the same promise. It's being repeated, but it's also it's also on a micro level, like this is for you and your line.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because of your obedience, because I've appointed you as ruler over these people, and because of your obedience and because of what you've done for me as ruler, and continuing to make me the head of Israel in the forefront of all the people's minds, and who you worship, and you lead by example by worshiping me and keeping this relationship with me. Because of that, you and your seed has earned blessings upon blessings, blessings among blessings. And something that seems rather benign, or that is pretty common amongst most ruling classes, says when your days are filled and you rest with your fathers, when you die, when you get old and die, I'm going to raise your seed up after you, who comes from your inward parts, and shall establish his reign. On a surface level, that's like saying when your shoes get holy, there's some brand new shoes, I got them for you because I want to see your feet covered. When they get worn out and beat up, I'm going to take them off and give you a new pair. Okay. Right. But I want you to listen to the language more than anything else. When your days are filled, you rest with your father, they shall raise up your seed after you. Now, where would the seed come? From the inward part, right? But it iterates it. It says, from your inward parts. So the Peshat is very easy to understand. Of course, the din is right there in front. But when you look at the Remez, it's talking about something different than just a sperm cell. From your inward parts, from the heart of your being. That which sets you, David, apart from all the others. That which sets you apart, that is what's going to be inside the seed that is raised up from you. And it describes him. It describes him. The seed that would be raised from the inward parts. It's redundant. Unless it's descriptive. Unless it's being acute and deliberate with its description. And Yah sent fire down upon Sodom from Yah out of heaven. Yah sent fire from Yah. It's acutely descriptive. Who sent it and where it came from. If you look at it surface level, you think it's a typo. You think it's just a repetitive thought. But it's not. It's telling you, it's giving you nature, it's giving you description, and then giving you location.
What's that? It's also the device of ancient Hebrew authors to emphasize a statement that they make. It would also often be repeated and sometimes in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
And this emphasis is important because they want you to pay attention to this and sort of really think about it as it's being said then and the broader scope of what's being said, because then it's all a narrative of them explaining what's happening and what's going to happen.
So in Hebrew, we don't have past, present, and future. We have complete and incomplete. But it's showing you the completeness it's showing you incomplete and complete in one sentence. You should complete it. Yeah? There's a part that should be completed. Then there's a part that is already completed. Did David already have children? Okay. Yeah?
So if you already had children, this prophet is telling him, seed after you. And he's not talking about the children he's already had. He's talking about one of his descendants.
From your inward parts. Someone who is of your ilk. Someone who is of your character.
someone who was like a man after Yah's own heart.
Okay. Was any of David's children like that?
No.
A single son.
Well, one hundreds of years later, but not immediately.
Okay. Did Shlomo come and excuse me, let me not get ahead of myself. Let's keep reading. And it describes what this seed from his inward parts is going to do when he gets there. He says, he does build a house for my name, and I shall establish the throne of his reign forever. Now, we established that David had children, yes? Did any of his children raise to the throne after him, after he died?
They did.
Good. So they fulfilled that part of the prophecy.
Correct.
They were already his seed. They took the throne after him. Who did?
Shlomo.
Shlomo.
Shalom.
King Solomon. Yes? He took the throne afterwards. When he took the throne. So he's already, so Shlomo has completed verse 12. Right?
Part of the seed after him taking the throne.
Okay. So he hasn't completed verse 12. Surely this is talking about Shlomo. Let's see if it continues. He does build a house for my name. Did Shlomo build a house for Yah?
He did.
Must be Shlomo. It must be Shlomo. Let's continue reading. And I shall establish the throne of his reign forever. Does Shlomo reign forever?
40 years.
No, so it can't be Shlomo.
Yeah.
Did David have other descendants that built and rebuilt temples and homes in his name and houses in his name?
This is first Shalom built the first temple, and his descendant Zerubbabel was part of the building of the second temple.
Hezekiah, didn't he restore the temple? Yoshiahu, didn't he restore the temple and the Torah within the people's hearts?
Mm-hmm.
These are all archetypes of this prophecy.
None of their reigns lasted.
None of their reigns lasted forever. Let's continue to see the seed from your inward parts. I am to be his father. Wait a minute. If he's speaking of David's descendants, who's David's descendants? Who is the father of David's descendants? Excuse me.
David.
So who's their father?
David.
This guy says, I am to be his father. Yah says through Natan that stating that he's going to be the father of the seed of David. He's the baby daddy.
So now we put the context that he's saying a seed from your line from one of your daughters. If I'm going to be the father, Yah's going to be the father.
Not necessarily. Now we're getting into speculation. But for Yah to say he's going to be his father, who is David to Yah? Where does David come from? Who is David? Who is David's father?
Yeshai.
Okay. Who's Yeshai's father? We don't have to really get into all of that, but where's Yeshai from?
Yeshai is from Yehuda.
Where's Yehuda from?
Yehuda is from Yaakov.
Okay, where's Yaakov from?
Yitzchak.
Where's Yitzchak from?
Avraham.
Where's Abraham from?
Terach.
Where's Terach from? Nahor.
No.
Where's Haran? I think you named one of his sons after
The
this.
point I'm making is
Well, when I point out making, we're gonna eventually get back to Adam. And who is his daddy?
you are.
Okay. I am to be his father. Yahushua made a statement. You who claim to be Jews but are not. You who claim to be Yehudim but are not. Den of vipers. Who is their father?
So
Hashatan. Yeah. Right? So when he's saying, I am to be his father, Yes, he means I'm going to be his literal father. He also means I'm going to be his Ab. I am his Ab. I am the strong tent pole that holds him up. I am he who sits at the door and waits. I am he who goes out. I am he who comes in. I am he who has put his protection over him. I am he who gives him up. How often do we hear of Joseph?
Yosef,
Exactly.
son of Yaakov.
Exactly. You heard
Mm.
Joseph, father of Yahusha. You don't hear about it. You didn't even know who I was talking about when I said Joseph.
Oh, Yosef. No.
And he is my son. If he does perversely, I shall reprove him with the rod of men and with the blows of sons of men. As did Shlomo reprove with the rods of men and the blows of the sons of men?
He was.
Shlomo?
No. His name means peace. He never fought.
Okay.
He never had a
Okay.
war.
There was descendants that were reproved, but they they didn't build the house. They didn't, so they couldn't. If you didn't fulfill the former part of the prophecy, it's hard to fulfill the latter. Were any of his descendants reproved by the sons of men?
30? Many.
With a rod and with the blows of the sons of men? And did Yah's loving commitment not turn aside from them, as it turned aside from Shaul, who he removed and kept him there as the king and the seat of his throne? Lucas. Wrap it up with this. Lucas, chapter 1, 31 and 33. (31 to 33). We're talking to Miriam. Gabriel, the Melachim, talking to Miriam. This is the Brit Hadash. I'm going to start at 30. And the messenger said to her, do not be afraid, Miriam, for you have found favor with Elohim. And see, you shall conceive in your womb and shall give birth to a son and call his name Yahusha. He shall be great and shall be called the Son of the Most High. And Yahweh shall give him the throne of his father David. And he shall reign over the house of Yaakov forever. There shall be no end to his reign. Sound familiar?
It's the same prophecy that the son spoke of fulfilled. Well, about to be fulfilled.
Yeah. Let me ask you something about what the contemporary with that time. What was happening in Jerusalem at this time when Miriam was getting this message?
The Roman occupation.
The Roman occupation.
It was now Judeo-Palestine.
Judeo-Palestine. Who was in charge of the Yehudim, at least?
The raging Herod.
Herod. As far as the temple was concerned, the house where Yah's name was made, the house of cedar that was Yah had his name put on.
Under the high priest.
Who built the house?
The Maccabee.
No.
Second temple. Zerubbabel.
No. Herod. It's Herod's temple. At this point, it's Herod's temple. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Who was in charge of the temple? What group of people?
it would be split between the Sadducees and the Pharisees.
Who were referred to by Yahusha as what?
Dan
And sons of.
Ashatan.
Okay. So in order for this to be fulfilled, when he's saying this, can we see the heel crushing the head?
Huh.
You see that? All prophecy falls under the first prophecy.
Right? Yeah.
You're a den of adders, a den of serpents, the sons of Hashatan. And Yahusha is the heel,
And then between lies the woman's seed.
the enmity. And was there ever anything, did he ever find common ground with the Pharisee, the Sadducee?
Did not.
They would not allow it to become the ground. What does the serpent seek to do? Bite your heel. What did they do?
They killed him.
They killed him.
They thought they
Was the throne? They thought the throne was here. They knew the prophecy. Prophecy was given in Bereshit 3. Nachash knew the prophecy. He's been using all of this trying to stop it. They knew the prophecy was here, and they knew that his mother was of Lewi, his father was of Yehudah. They knew what they were doing. They were trying to prevent him. Actually, I think it was the opposite. I think his father was a Levi, his mother was a Yehudah. I'm not sure yet. Don't quote me on that. But they were trying to prevent him from taking his rightful rulership and reestablishing the lineage of David. Do we have another time where the lineage of David was usurped?
Herod uses this.
Who else? Earlier, we were just talking about him. He almost fulfilled that prophecy. Shlomo. What did Shlomo do?
He built the temple.
What did Shlomo do after he built the temple to Yah?
He built. Oh,
He built many homes to other gods
he built
for the sake of his wives. And in his latter days, he strayed away. And because of the distance in which he strayed, by setting up high places and false idols in Israel that came and persisted, that established which was the foundation of the initial apostasy that led to all the other apostasies. And it wasn't resurrected or changed around until Yoshiyahu, the namesake of our Moshiach, came hundreds of years later to reestablish the Torah, and still didn't do enough to stop the inevitable backlash and fallout from everything that had come before it, because of this first apostasy. And because of that first apostasy from Shlomo, the reign of the reign was taken from the hands of the house of David
10 tribes.
and given to Achab. And Achab's lineage almost completely usurped. You see that? And it was hard to get rid of him. Yahu comes, and then you have others come after one after the other until Yah had to wipe out the entire lineage. Everyone, quote unquote, everyone that pisses against the wall. And every ruler, and remember, right after that, now the house of David gets reestablished. But it's still mixed because the houses have been mixed now. Achaz has mixed some of his blood is mixed with the house of David.
Patriarchal.
Yes. Remains. The patriarchal lineage still remains. But there's still a mixing, right? Then they fall away. It's completely disbanded. The throne isn't even set up. Right? You can't have a king anymore because now Yisrael, or Yehudah rather, is a principality of whatever nation is in charge at the time. Okay? Now they're in a position, because Rome is a different type of hierarchy. In Rome, a slave can become an emperor. It's possible, at least in this role. Okay? Slave can become an emperor. Now they can reestablish the kingship. They want to have, if they can be a vassal king, satrap king to the Roman Senate, they can usurp rulership in Yehudah and claim what they believe to be a divine right. Place themselves in a position to gain benefit from being royal lineage, but it's not. It's like with the Shiites and the Sunnis, and it's like with the conflict up in Czechoslovakia and Russia and all these other people. Who's the rightful rulers of the crown? Who has the right to the throne? But who, according to these prophecies and according to Scripture, who has the right to the crown? The son of David. So when this man comes around, he's actually a rightful ruler. That's a big problem, sir.
Yeah, I'm sure I could trace his lineage. He can trace his lineage directly to Zerubbabel. That's important because Zerubbabel was the seed of David that came back to help restore Jerusalem after.
Under Darius.
Yes. And if he could trace his lineage back to Zerubbabel could trace his lineage back. And after tracing his lineage back, he could trace that lineage back.
And it predates the Zadokian priesthood, which the Patricium and the Sadduceum were using as their.
And this is a bit of a tangent, but the Pharisee and Sadducees that Yahusha dealt with, they were Levites, air quote, that came up after the Maccabean era. And during the Maccabean time is when we actually have brothers of priests people in the line of the Kohanim, brothers vying for power against each other.
So fraternal war, we have fraternal and feudal war, amongst the priesthood. But Yahushua's presence put an end to all of that because he is king and priest, Melchizedek. But what I really want to leave us with is how those prophecies line up seamlessly.
Yeah, it's perfect. It's the same thing.
Yahushua's presence, his birth, and his work is the heel crushing the head. But the heel didn't crush the head yet. What has to happen first? Before the heel crushes the head, what happens first? The snake has to bite the heel. They bit his heel by staking him. Curses is he who hangeth hangeth from a tree. He took on our curses. He said if he acts perversely, did Yahushua act perversely? But he paid the price of a perverse man. So that he could then get this. Did you see that? That is part of the prophecy. For him to receive the reproof of perverseness. From what? From who? From Yah's hand? From the hands of men. Hands of men righteous?
No.
Oh. He had to fulfill the prophecy. This is what he says. It has to be done to fulfill when he says, oh, goodness. Okay. But when Yahushua says that he come to fulfill what the law and the prophet, with the prophets had spoken of, prophecy and the prophets. Okay? This is what when he's giving us, telling his friends to take heart, to be of good cheer. When he's being led to his death. Because this has to happen. When he's being beaten. When he's being scoured. When he's being jeered. When he's being pushed, kicked, spat on. It has to happen because the prophecy has to be fulfilled. But how will it be fulfilled? Y'all think the Talmudim is taught ones didn't understand the prophecy? Some of them did. Who do you say that I am? I say that you're the Mashiach. He knows who you are. He knows what he come to fulfill. How are you going to do that? By dying. You're my friends. I'm the king. I'm the rightful ruler of the Bahamas. We walk around for 2.5, 3 years telling everybody on the low. And because I'm the rightful king of the Bahamas, I actually have access. I know all the secret places that the old king of the Bahamas put in all the old wells he dug that were overgrown and people have forgotten. All the old places that had gold that people have forgotten. And I'm giving people gold and water and healing them and giving them things that they need. Word gets out. Yeah? The powers that be hear about it, and they hear about my legitimacy. And they hear I got a crew. One person in my crew thinking, yeah, all right, let's get the swords. Another person in my crew thinking, all right, well, we got to get, we got to have commerce. We got to establish commerce. We have to have a financial or an economic benefit over them. We have to have some sort of leverage. Okay? I got to be able to use some leverage. Right? Everyone in the crew got a different idea how we're going to do it. But then when I say, yo, no, I'm going to let them arrest me and execute me in front of everybody. I thought you was the Mashiach. I thought you come to reign forever. Your throne's supposed to be established forever. Yeah. But you're missing a part of the prophecy. What part am I missing? Come from the seed of David. Yah is your father. He calls you his son. What has to be chastised? Chastised for what? For iniquities, for perverseness. But master, you've done no perverseness. These things they've accused you of as foolishness. They're not true. They've accused you of being a liar, of being a hypocrite. They've accused you of being a wine bibber. They've accused you of being a zealot. Someone who evokes the people to rage and to chaos, to riots. They've called you a blasphemer. They've accused you of being a worker of witchcraft. They've accused you, they've even gone so far to saying you're good for nothing for being a Galilean. These are nothing. None of these things are what you are guilty of. No, my son. They're all the things you're guilty of.
All of our sins. The sins of the entire world.
They placed all their sins on him.
The 12. Don't you understand? You are your friends, bro. In a group of you, the one that pays for the worst of you is the best of you. If they were worthy, they would have gone with him. But the Talmudim hypocrites, with some hypocrites, some liars, yeah, some thieves, some blasphemers, they were guilty of that. The 12 men around him were guilty of the things that he died for. Some of them, yeah. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But you see the point I'm bringing forth here?
Yeah. Everything they accused him of, they themselves were guilty.
They themselves were guilty.
Along with some of the men with it.
So he had to fulfill the prophecy. Now that he's fulfilled the prophecy, died on that tree, now his throne is to be established. That's what we're waiting on. That's who the prophets are, the harbingers of this message. It's destruction. It's rebirth. The tearing down of the false and the establishment forever of the genuine. Hallelujah. What we like to do is come to close with a quick prayer, and I hope you'll join us. Baruch atah Yahweh Eloheinu melech haolam boreinu kokoinu abinu shevet shemayim yitkadesh shemka Yahweh Elohim of Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. We thank you and give you honor and esteem for what you have offered us today, the truth, the deliverance in the opportunity for obedience, to hear, listen, and understand and obey, to hear, listen, understand, and seek your truth, and make it a part of us. Place it on our inward parts, so that if given the opportunity, our seed may then carry it on into the future and be blessed for it. As we say in our preamble in hevarim, or Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4, we will write this on our hearts, speak of it wherever we are, impressing it upon our children, and even so far as writing it on our gates. Hallelujah. To order Rabbi Yahweh, B'Shem Yahushua. Amen. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you in 2 more weeks for another installment of the hevarim, consistency and contemporary relevance. Shalom.
Shalom.
Shalom.